I don't have a single networked camera in my house anymore. Not the doorbell, not the one that used to watch the backyard, not the one that used to sit on top of the router in the hallway. This is why. It started the way it starts for almost everyone. A package went missing off the porch. Nothing valuable. A phone case. $12. And I did what you do. I ordered a video doorbell. Then, because the doorbell only sees the porch, I put a camera on the back fence line, over the gate, where I couldn't see from any window. Then, because those two didn't cover the hallway where the router lived, or the living room where I kept my laptop open on the coffee table most nights, I added a third, small, white, motion-activated, sitting on top of the router itself, angled down at the room like it was watching the room think. 3 cameras, 1 app, 1 login. I checked it the way you check anything that makes a small sound on your phone. Reflexively. At dinner. In bed. In the bathroom. A raccoon on the fence line at 2 a.m. The mail carrier at 11. My own car pulling in at 6. The porch light catching the windshield. I got used to the small red dot in the corner of the app that meant something had moved. I got used to the sound the notification made. A soft double chime. Almost pleasant. I liked it, if I'm honest. I liked being able to see my own house from anywhere. The first wrong thing was the notification I almost swiped away. New device signed in. 11:47 at night. I assumed it was the app itself. Some background refresh. The kind of thing that happens when a company updates its servers. I tapped it anyway, more out of habit than concern, and it took me to a device list I didn't know existed. A page, buried 3 menus deep, that showed every device that had ever logged into my account. Mine was there, my phone, named correctly. Below it was a second entry. A tablet. A city I didn't recognize. 400 miles from mine. Access granted 11 days earlier. I told myself it was a support login. Companies do that. Someone on a help desk troubleshooting a firmware bug and forgets to leave a note. I revoked it anyway, changed the password, turned on the 2-factor login the app had been begging me to enable since the day I installed it. I felt, for about a week, like I'd caught it in time. The camera on the router doesn't move. It's fixed. A plastic dome. No motor. Nothing that pans or tilts. I know this because I looked it up the week I bought it. Compared it against the pricier model that does move, and told myself I didn't need that feature. That a static angle on the hallway was enough. So when I came downstairs one night for water and caught it out of the corner of my eye, angled 2, maybe 3 degrees further left than it had ever sat, aimed less at the hallway and more at the doorway to my bedroom. I stood there for a long time, telling myself that I was misremembering the angle, that I'd never actually looked at it closely enough to know what degree it usually sat at. That plastic mount shift that houses settle. I did not call anyone. I took a photo of it instead, so I'd have something to compare it against later, and went back to bed, and did not sleep for most of that night listening to a house that sounded exactly the way it always sounded. The device list had a second page I hadn't found the first time. A session log. Every time anyone had opened a live view instead of just a recorded clip, with a timestamp and a duration. Mine were scattered the way you'd expect. Evenings, mornings, the occasional 2 a.m. check when a notification woke me. But there was a second pattern laid over mine, thin and precise, that I only saw because I made myself scroll all the way back to the account's first month. Sessions, 3 or 4 a week, always on weekdays, always somewhere between 9 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon, always while I was at work, never once during a weekend, never once at night. Whoever was opening that live view had learned my schedule before I'd noticed anything was wrong, and was only ever watching the house when it was empty. I sat with my laptop open at my kitchen table for 40 minutes and did not touch anything. I told myself the obvious things: a glitch in the logging system, a caching error, a support engineer's automated test running on a cron job at suspiciously regular hours. I have thought about that 40 minutes more than almost anything else that happened afterward, because it was the last stretch of time in the whole story where I still had the option of believing something small. 6 days later, there was a package on the porch I hadn't ordered. A small padded envelope, my name spelled correctly, no return address, containing nothing, an empty anti-static bag, the kind electronics ship in, folded once and taped shut on itself. I checked my order history twice. I checked my email for a shipping confirmation I hadn't seen. There wasn't one. I stood on my own porch, holding an empty envelope with my name on it, and did the thing I'd been avoiding for 11 days, which was admit that the person on the tablet 400 miles away, or wherever they actually were, already knew things about my house that I hadn't told anyone. My name, my address, the hours I wasn't home. I called the camera company's support line that afternoon. They confirmed the second device had been removed from my account, apologized for the inconvenience, and told me, almost as an aside, the kind of detail a tired person on a headset mentions without meaning to alarm you, that account removal doesn't always revoke an active hardware pairing if the device itself was physically added to my network, rather than logged in remotely. I asked what that meant. She asked if I had more cameras than the 3 I'd registered. I said no. I was already walking toward the hallway while I said it. I found it behind the router, wedged into the cable clutter where I never looked, held in place by its own charging cord wound twice around a data cable. Smaller than my thumb. A single pinhole lens, no branding, no light, no name I could look up. It had been there. I checked the router's own connected devices list. The one the company's device list didn't show me because it wasn't their hardware. For 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Which was 3 weeks before the new device notification I'd caught and revoked. Whatever I'd fixed that night hadn't been the beginning of anything. It had been the middle of it. A second visible symptom of something that had already had root access to my house's own network for a month and a half before I noticed. I did not touch it. I do not know, still, if that was the right choice or the wrong one. I went and sat in my car in the driveway with the doors locked and called the police from there, because it was the only room in the whole property I was suddenly sure wasn't listening. While I waited for them, I did one more thing I have not been able to explain to anyone who's asked, including myself. I opened the live view. Not the router camera. I didn't trust anything connected to that network anymore. Not even to look at it. But the doorbell, which ran on its own separate hub, its own login, a system I'd set up months after the others specifically, because I'd read once that redundant systems shouldn't share infrastructure. I don't know what I expected to see. The porch, empty, the way it always was. The porch was empty, but the small preview thumbnail beside it, the indoor camera, the one on the router, the one I just walked away from with the doors locked behind me, was still live, still streaming to an app I hadn't opened, and for 3 or 4 seconds before the doorbell's feed buffered and covered it, I watched something cross the hallway on that thumbnail, not toward the door, away from it, toward the back of the house, toward the kitchen, toward the door I'd left unlocked, because I hadn't thought, in the 40 seconds it took me to get from the hallway to the driveway, that I needed to lock a door behind me inside my own home. 2 officers went in through the front. One came back out after 4 minutes and told me the house was clear. No one in any room. Nothing disturbed that they could see on a first pass. The back door off the kitchen was standing open. No forced entry. The kind of open that meant someone had simply turned the handle from a side that was never locked in the first place, because I never locked a door that faced a fenced yard with a camera pointed at the gate. They found the second hidden camera's charging cable ran not to a battery, but to a small data relay box tucked above the ceiling tile in the closet next to the router. Something a professional would call a bridge. Something that let a device with no cellular signal of its own piggyback on my network's uplink and phone home to somewhere else entirely. It had been drawing maybe 4 watts continuously for 6 weeks. My electric bill had gone up by less than the cost of a cup of coffee a month, and I had never once looked closely enough to notice. The only thing out of place in the whole house was a kitchen chair, pulled 6 inches from the table and turned to face the hallway instead of the counter. Nothing was taken. Nothing was broken. The officer who found it told me, gently, that in his experience that kind of thing, a chair moved, nothing stolen, usually meant someone had sat there. Recently. Long enough to be comfortable. Not long enough, or not interested enough, to need anything else from the house except the ability to watch it, and to leave, whenever they wanted, through a door that was never locked, because I'd trusted 3 cameras and a company's login page to do the job an actual lock was supposed to do. They never found who it was. The relay box had no registration, no serial number that led anywhere. A burner device bought in cash, the way you'd buy anything you didn't want traced. The account access had come through a VPN that dead-ended in a country with no extradition process anyone bothered to start for an empty envelope and a moved chair. There was no theft to prosecute. There was, technically, almost nothing that had happened to me at all, if you only counted the things a police report has a box for. I took every camera out of that house within the week. Not just the compromised one. All 3. The doorbell too, even though nothing about the doorbell itself was ever proven to be part of it. I went back to deadbolts and a light on a timer, and the specific, old-fashioned unease of not knowing exactly what my house looks like at any given moment from outside of it. People tell me that's a strange trade to make. Less information for less certainty, and I don't disagree with them. I just no longer believe that watching a place is the same thing as keeping it safe. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes the watching is how they learn the schedule in the first place. I still check my phone reflexively some nights for a notification that isn't going to come, because there's nothing left in that house that can send me one. I don't have a single networked camera in my house anymore. Now you know why.